and welcome to the TF1 show. Today, we must swallow our tears of abandonment as we are recapping the entire 2019 F1 season. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the ridiculous. I'm your host, Tinus, and today I am so excited to welcome a legendary F1 pundit and fan, Sasha Martinengo. Thank you so much, Sasha, for taking the time to join me on this plucky little podcast.
Listen, Tinus, you know, I'm just so impressed with what you've been doing and so chuffed for you. So it is my privilege to be here with you today. Thanks very much.
Cool. So I guess we can just jump straight in and discuss the season as a whole. Now, Sasha, what were your general impressions of the season, just if you look at back at the whole of 2019?
I think initially there was, I was optimistic of a much tighter fight. And then after the first race, I unfortunately got a bit deflated and realized, oh my word, it's going to be a hell of a lot of the same. But, I think my initial expectation was, excitement. And, at the end of the season, I was excited.
Yeah, I think especially for some, it just came alive, I think about halfway through where, and I agree initially, it was basically the two Mercedes running away with it every race. What was it? 5 consecutive 1-2s, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think they won their first 8 races and, oh no, it was crazy.
And, which was actually sad because I think if Red Bull and Ferrari sorted out their things a bit earlier, it could have been a very, very hair-raising fight for the title. But as I think has been the case the last couple of years, it just seems like those two teams sort of sorted themselves out a bit late.
Yeah, I think you know, Mercedes have been so incredibly professional since the start of this hybrid era, turbo, part of Formula One, that they've always kept something a little bit back, and they've always just been, you know, 2 steps ahead of the 8 ball, which has always made teams like Red Bull, teams like Ferrari push even harder. And then unfortunately, when you get into those kind of situations, you start making mistakes, whether it be on the track or whether it be off the track. Elements of frustration, elements of rushing things, creep into, you know, your day-to-day working. So, you know, sometimes we can be so critical from the outside, but, we don't really know how difficult it is from the inside.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. And I think case in point was Ferrari this year, where I think they came into the season with so much expectation. I think after winter testing, the whole world were basically proclaiming to, you know, that it was the press and it was the other teams, and everybody was just saying that Ferrari, they're going to be ahead at the start of the season. And we were all sort of fascinated to see whether it's going to be the case. And then obviously in Australia, what was it? Half a second or 1/16 of a second between Mercedes and Ferrari?
Well, isn't it? It was 50 seconds at the end of the race.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was but you know, you're 100% right. You know, one has to take your hat off, number one, to Ferrari for being so bold when it came to preseason testing with this very radical front wing. And everyone's sitting and going, wow, what is this all about? And they were incredibly fast in preseason testing. Clearly Mercedes sat there and went, listen, they haven't got this right and we're not going to show them our hand. Went to Australia and, I mean, you know, they just walked all over everybody. I mean, Bottas was sublime in Australia. But Mercedes were, and you know, 50 seconds down the road, that was the first of the Ferraris. And then you started scratching your head and you're going, whoa, guys, somewhere along the line, somebody's done the maths wrong.
You spoke about, you know, Ferrari being bold in testing, but I think Mercedes had a similar, you know, they were quite controversial as well, where for the first week they pitched up with a whole different car. They sort of signed off a car, I think November the previous year for the first week of testing. And then said, okay, but that's just sort of our pretend car. And then the next week they pitched up with a whole new design. And, I mean, that takes some doing as well for a team to have the capability of sort of developing 2 cars in parallel and sort of see which one is going to be the one they're going to go with for the rest of the season.
I think that's also, I mean, that's just the expertise of this Mercedes organization is the fact that they've been able to, do multiple tasks and be perfect at just about all of them. We did see a human side of them later on in the season, you know, but I'm sure we'll get to there. But Mercedes, honestly, under the guidance of Toto Wolff, James Allison. I mean, what an unbelievable team that they really have there. And, you know, one can only hope that, you know, it continues for them, but in another aspect, you know, we also want to see somebody else go along there and win, whether it be Red Bull or Ferrari or, I mean, even the likes of McLaren.
Definitely. I think we can, if you, especially if you look on the internet, it always appears that people are sort of wishing for Mercedes' downfall. But I think we should be looking not for the downfall of Mercedes, but we're just hoping for, you know, the teams like Ferrari and Red Bull and McLaren to just somehow bridge that last little bit of the performance gap and be up there with them so they can compete sort of toe to toe, because I think, and we got glimpses of it at the end of the season.
Yeah, listen, 100%. And, you know, don't forget any professional sports person in their life. If you look at the world of golf, when Tiger Woods was at the complete peak, everyone wants Tiger to fall. When Roger Federer is at the top, everyone wants Roger to fall. So in any kind of sport, you know, if you have this, I wouldn't just say domination, but this incredible professionalism, everyone's looking for them to fail. And in Formula One specifically, you know, people are so passionate about their teams and drivers. You know, if there's too much domination, then of course then we need to change all of the rules. And Mercedes have been able to adapt to everything that has been thrown their way. And if you go back in the history of Formula One, in the Schumacher era, you know, people were looking for Schumacher to fall and Ferrari to fall, and people were trying to change the rules and make sure that it was more fair. This has been much more complicated with Mercedes because it hasn't been that simple. Oh, well, listen.
Sort of a chameleon.
Yeah.
Just change the rules and they just strong in a different area.
Exactly. So, I mean, what this team has achieved, I mean, if you go to the stats and you're great with all of the stats. I mean, if you just look at the stats of what Mercedes have achieved from 2014 to now, it's unprecedented. You won't find that in any kind of sport, this kind of, perfection. You know, everyone will say it's domination. Yes, it is domination, but it's perfection. They've crossed all of the T's. They've made sure that all of the boxes are in the right place, and they've done an extraordinary job. And they've also made sure that they've had brilliant drivers. You know, Rosberg has won a championship. Lewis has won all of them. And listen, Bottas is no slow coach.
Let's maybe stop with the Mercedes drivers, but let's maybe talk about Bottas. Bottas 2.0. So at the beginning of the year, everybody was sort of waiting to see what Valtteri Bottas could do after it was a bad season for him last year. It was poor. 2018 was not a good season for him. So what were your thoughts about him this year?
I came in there and I enjoyed his bravado. I enjoyed the way that he came in and said, you know, I'm here and I'm going to show you guys what this is all about. And he came out and he was phenomenal when it came to Australia. And that would have shaken Lewis a little bit. Lewis would have sat there and gone, whoa, okay. Let me check out exactly what this guy is doing. But to be a partner, a second driver or whatever, with Lewis Hamilton is always going to be extremely difficult. So for him, he would have to just improve on his consistency. And that was eventually his downfall during the course of the season. But he's a fantastically fast racing driver. If there's two drivers you don't want to be teamed up with, one of them is Lewis Hamilton, the other one's Max Verstappen. Yeah. And we'll get to that just now. But Bottas, I think, has done a good job, but he did have some errors as well. And Germany will haunt him for a long time.
That was his one opportunity, I think, to get one 100%. And I guess we'll talk a bit more about Germany a bit later as well. But I think what Valtteri Bottas' past 3 years at Mercedes has shown us is, I think, just how good Hamilton has become as the non-traditional skills, if I can call it that, where, you know, ever since he started, Hamilton was known for being the really, really fast guy. He could do the one lap qualifying. He could put in the really, really quick laps when he had to. But people always used to say that, you know, he makes mistakes. He wasn't maybe the most consistent guy. But now I think Hamilton, that's exactly what makes him so good, is it's like a slow smothering of his teammates, where like his teammates can get one here and there, like a good pole lap here or there for Valtteri Bottas, but Hamilton is just always there, getting the second places, getting the first places, making up the points.
Exactly. He's like a python.
Yeah.
He just strangles his opposition. whether it's his own teammate or whether it's his actual competitors. He just sits there and goes, well, if I'm having a bad race, I'll come in fourth, and look, I'm only one position behind where you are. Next race, he comes in first and his opposition lands up sixth or seventh. He's so calculated. He's so determined. He's an extraordinary racing driver, is Lewis Hamilton. And perhaps the greatest of all time.
What I find really interesting, and I fully agree, what I find really interesting about, if you look at him, I think especially the last 2 seasons, and after, I think, losing that championship to Rosberg.
Which he never lost.
Yeah, I mean.
Anyway, we can debate that another
that's
time.
That's a different story. But obviously, the pivotal sort of moment in that championship fight was when his engine blew up in Malaysia. And ever since then, he's been extremely aware of his engine usage, of how much he's been using a specific engine over a specific period of time. He's always looking to say, listen, let's turn down the engine. Let's sort of save the engine. And I think sort of just that's an example of how he's now sort of thinking big picture about, he might be coming second instead of first in this race because he can't use that much of his engine capabilities, let's say, for example, but he knows that might come and pay him back later on in the season. And I think we did sort of see that where he's the only driver this year that finished every single racing lap.
Yeah, every single racing lap, and he scored points in every single race, as well. I think what would also, a guy like Lewis Hamilton, besides, just sitting and going, well, let's turn the engine down or whatever. Michael Schumacher was the one who said, records are made to be broken.
Yeah.
When he started breaking records. Lewis Hamilton, it's going to take an extraordinary, career of somebody to come and match Michael Schumacher and then Lewis Hamilton's records. Because next year, Lewis will break every other record that Michael has. It's a fait accompli, the way that I see it. I think he's got seven races to win, and then he matches Michael and those. And, he'll get a 7th title. He might get an 8th title. Anybody else, maybe in your lifetime, or maybe not in my lifetime. I don't think in Formula One, I'm going to see someone, match those records.
Oh, we have 2 young pretenders coming up, and we saw that on the Abu Dhabi podium in Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
So how do you see that playing out with Hamilton? Because Hamilton has come out saying quite a lot that he's really excited to measure himself against these 2 youngsters.
Lewis is a racer. And Lewis is one of those who will race you, and as long as it's fair racing, he'll go for it. And he makes no bones about it. Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, yes, are 2 phenomenal racing drivers who are in very good cars. There are quite a few other drivers out there who I'd also like to see in a Ferrari or a Red Bull. We'll go through some of those.
I'll speak about one of them a bit later. I'm very passionate about one of them.
Okay, yeah, we'll get to that. Max Verstappen, to me, I think is the real deal. Charles Leclerc has shown moments of greatness, but 1 or 2 little mistakes. I think it was in Belgium or Italy. Actually, Italy, when he won his first race, and that might have been a little bit of nerves. We went off the track and kept himself on there. Charles Leclerc, yes, is also supremely fast, and we've seen that specifically over 1 lap.
Yeah, he's very fast.
Yeah, we've got to get him tuned into his race pace, whereas Max is quick on 1 lap and phenomenally quick in race pace as well. So this fight, if Honda give them a half decent car as they've given them in the last couple of races in 2020, Lewis against Max, I think is going to be just mouthwatering.
It's going to be phenomenal. And I think for me, the main thing that I would love to see between the 2 of them, and maybe even if Leclerc can join the party there, is I think up to now, Verstappen has been able to operate without too much pressure in terms of the bigger picture. So because of the limitations that his car has had against the Mercedes, he can obviously scores the odd race win here or there, but it's always Verstappen and Red Bull sort of taking the gamble in terms of strategy or trying something new or trying something interesting to unsettle the front runners. And sometimes it works. And then obviously it was an incredible performance by Verstappen and everybody is up in arms and teary eyed. But then conversely, if it doesn't work out, we're like, oh, well, Red Bull doesn't have the fastest car. So, better luck next time.
No, listen, I think you bring up a very, very good point. If you look at Max, if he's anything further than 5th or 6th down on the grid, all of a sudden that kamikaze spirit comes out of him.
Yes.
And sometimes he all of a sudden makes a mistake or takes out somebody in the first corner or knocks wheels and those kind of things. He's going to have to contain that because, qualifying, sometimes things don't go that well. He's got to learn that racecraft from the likes of Vettel and the likes of, especially Lewis Hamilton. If you're further down in the pack, just play your cards out, properly. Get through those first couple of corners and then you can go racing. Because we know in racing conditions, he's supremely fast. But, I don't want Max all of a sudden to start making excuses, at this kind of tender age.
And so I think also then the point that I wanted to make by bringing all of that up is it's going to be very interesting to see if Max is in the position of challenging for a world championship, how he approaches that pressure. And if that pressure that he now all of a sudden has to deal with in terms of, sometimes taking the second place or taking the third place and being happy with that and for the greater good, if you will, how that changes the way he drives, if at all, and how that just sort of changes the dynamic between himself and someone like Lewis Hamilton, who obviously is very experienced in dealing with this type of pressure.
Yeah, I think, that's going to come down to how he's managed. Don't forget, these are still young racing drivers. Leclerc, Max are very, very young racing drivers. Max has got his dad, Jos Verstappen, who I think could be a bit problematic in my personal opinion if they get into the situation where they have to now try and fight for championships. Christian Horner, I think, could be pretty decent at managing that. But once we see them in this kind of situation, Tinus, we're going to have to see exactly who manages it the best out of them. Horner's not a Toto Wolff. And don't forget, Lewis has been there. He should have won at 2007. He didn't. He should have 2016. He should have also maybe won. So Lewis has been round that block. Max hasn't been round that block.
Yeah.
And I think as a collective, I think Team LH is stronger than Team MV at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'd 100% agree with that. Let's maybe talk about Team MV in more specifically Red Bull. Now, the big thing for Red Bull obviously this year was their switch to the Honda engine. I think all of us were a bit apprehensive at the beginning, given how much of a disaster Honda was with McLaren. I mean, they're competitive.
Well, I think that's, we should say what a disaster they were with McLaren. Now, was it Honda? Was it McLaren? Was it Fernando Alonso?
Yeah.
And if you ask all of those questions, all of a sudden, first year with Red Bull, 3 months to bolt that Honda engine into the back of the Red Bull chassis, and all of a sudden they start getting competitive and they win the first race before Ferrari even in a Honda powered engine. So was the Honda that bad? When it was with McLaren.
I think it was pretty bad with McLaren.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't just sit there and go within 3 months, all of a sudden they turned a massive corner. I expected a lot more engine failures this year from Honda, and they weren't that
somehow managed to fix the reliability because, like in the McLaren years, it was just almost every single race, one, if not both of the engines.
No, it was horrendous. It was horrendous.
So interestingly, and I think that might also have just been a part of it. I don't think everything, but a part of it could have been how McLaren actually packaged the engine. Because I think they took a bit of a different approach initially where McLaren sort of said, this is our car. You must make your engine fit within these parameters. I think they had a very, very slim sort of engine cover design, very restrictive in terms of how much freedom they had for the Honda engine. And that could have also contributed to a lot of the reliability issues that they struggled with. And I think with Red Bull, they took more of an approach where they said, listen, Honda, do the best that you can, come up with the best design, and then they'll try and integrate that within the Red Bull chassis. And I think that's also sort of how they've learned from.
I agree with you. I think I'll be honest. I think McLaren sat there and went, this is how we do things. And there we go. Put your engine in there. Honda has sat and said, listen, it doesn't completely fit this way in this configuration. Red Bull sat with Adrian Newey and Honda and sat and said, listen, this is what the engine looks like. Newey went and said, okay, you know what? We can put it in. And that's what they did. And I mean, brilliant job from Honda. Brilliant job from Red Bull this year. In number one, getting that engine much more reliable and eventually also getting it hugely competitive.
Yeah, it's fast.
It's proper
You
quick.
saw obviously in Brazil with Gasly and Hamilton, the run to the finish line. Don't think completely representative given the altitude, but still, you know, where would you have expected to see that 2 years ago?
No, 100%. And I mean, that's what we needed. We've needed in Formula One. You know, don't forget, if you go back 2004, 2005, 2006, there was, Ferrari, and Renault at the time, none of them could do any kind of development on the engine. So Mercedes just walked away with it. So what we do want to see now is Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari and Renault all at sort of a level when it comes to engine power. And then from there, then it's car designer and driver.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, if you can quickly talk about Gasly and Albon. So Red Bull also had a bit of an eventful year when it came to the driver markets.
Sure.
With, poor Pierre Gasly being dumped into the team after Daniel Ricciardo decided that he, is looking for greener pastures, and we can maybe talk about that a bit later. But so Pierre Gasly, it got painful. Like later on in sort of his tenure there, it was tough. It was a tough watch. I think the worst probably for me was Germany.
Yeah. Well, I think that was the writing on the wall for him. But, you know, Gasly didn't actually have a bad run of it. If you sit there and go, he's up against Max Verstappen, perhaps maybe we thought too much of anybody up against Max Verstappen. So Pierre was actually doing okay. Yes, his qualifying let him down. And that's what was the worrying aspect for Red Bull, because, you know, when you've got two drivers right up next to each other and they can take points off Mercedes or Ferrari or Renault, that's ideally what you want. You can't have one driver, you know, in P2 and the other down in P9 or something.
Yeah,
like
that was also the other thing where in the race then, so you sort of qualify down the order, and then you just had this tendency of sort of getting stuck.
Yeah,
like
there we
he
go.
was just sort of stuck in P8 and P9, and he couldn't get
pass
past the McLarens, and it was just,
I know it was, and you felt desperate for the guy, and you went, okay, fine. And then all of a sudden, you know, and Helmut Marko's done this before at Red Bull, and sat and said, okay, we're giving you the chop. He did it to Kvyat a couple of years ago, giving you the chop, and we're giving Albon a chance, and you go, okay, good luck, Alex, wonderful. Albon gets this chance, but it's a poison chalice. Even in the last race, the last two races, he might have been a little bit closer in one of the qualifying events. Actually, it was America that he was quite close to Max when it came to qualifying. But he is the good part of 0.4 to half a second behind Max Verstappen when it comes to qualifying. And in race pace, he's at least 10, 12 seconds down the road.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all okay going, well, you know, first season, blah, 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 blah. If he doesn't match up in the first 6 races of next year and is right next to Max Verstappen, I'll ask you the question, what is Alex Albon's future?
No, good question. And I think that's the thing we need to ask. I think the one thing where Albon has performed better than Gasly was at least when the opportunity presents itself in the race, he can sort of make a pass stick.
Top class.
Think about Brazil, where he was running second.
Oh, no, he was fabulous.
He got a bit lucky with, obviously, the safety car brought things a bit closer, but I mean, he shoved one up the inside past Vettel. And
he drove well. Yeah.
So I think that's maybe where Red Bull think, you know, Albon probably is doing a bit better than Gasly. But for how long will they accept half a second in qualifying?
I agree with that. And then also you go, has Alex Albon come into Formula One to play second fiddle to whoever? He also wants to be a world champion. But we all know that unfortunately he is being given that role now to support Max.
Yes.
I really hope that he can get within a 10th of Max and they qualify next to each other, because then that at least will put the radar out for other teams as well to notice that the guy is there. If he's 4 tenths and half a second behind when it comes to qualifying against Max throughout the whole of next season, his career is done.
They can't play the team game then. That's the thing that's
100%.
the most important thing for Red Bull next year is going to be, if they have the competitive car that we think they're going to have, is they need two drivers to take points off Mercedes and Ferrari. And we'll talk about Ferrari just now, but we've already discussed for Mercedes have two very, very high quality drivers in the car. And even though Hamilton will probably be the one winning the championships for them, Bottas is still going to be in there mixing it with the big boys.
Well, no, 100%. I mean, if Lewis is down the road there, it's not going to be easy for Leclerc, a Verstappen, a Vettel, or an Albon to get past Valtteri Bottas. He's going to fight for it all the way. So, he's no pushover.
All right. I think let's move on to, let's say, the most controversial team of the year. The team with, and Sasha's laughing. So Ferrari. Now,
where do we start?
Yeah, there's so much to say about our favorite boys in red. Let's talk about the two drivers first.
Okay.
So it was Sebastian Vettel, the seasoned veteran, the four-time world champion, the golden boy that Ferrari chose to take them to their first championship in how many years?
Mm-hmm.
And then this new young superstar, Charles Leclerc, second year of Formula One driving for Ferrari. At the beginning of the year, everybody said, or Ferrari themselves came out and said that, Vettel will sort of gain precedence if the situation calls for it. Leclerc will just be here this first year to sort of learn and just become comfortable in the team. And I don't think that's what happened, Sasha.
You're 100% right. And you 100% spot on with the analysis. Everyone just expected, Sebastian, take the little young boy under your wing and show him the ropes. And of course, the first race, yes, Vettel was quicker. And then, Bahrain, all of a sudden we saw Leclerc wake up.
Yeah.
I know it was a desperately unlucky race for him because that might have changed the whole season around. And then China and I think Azerbaijan, Vettel had a little bit of an up on Charles Leclerc. But Leclerc, are we talking Vettel? We're talking Vettel first.
Well, we can sort of talk. Let's talk both of them at the same time.
Okay, so Vettel all of a sudden, Vettel's one of those drivers where if the car's not 100% like him, he's like Button. If it's not 100% to his liking, he just somewhere along the ride he can drive around most problems. But if there's something fundamental, then all of a sudden he just battles with it. I'm a huge Sebastian fan, and I eventually got frustrated myself with him going, "Come on, Sebastian, I'm trying to defend you, and you keep on cocking up.
Yeah.
So make it better." But I don't think anybody expected Charles Leclerc to be on that kind of pace with Vettel as quickly as he did, and then also showing some incredible maturity and finesse in some of his driving, not all of it. He also, made a couple of hairy moves on people, just to show them that they're there. But some of his driving was really, really top class. He's still got a way to go. Let's make no bones about that. But I must say that was a mighty impressive season from Charles Leclerc.
I just thinking, I actually got goosebumps thinking about sort of how he said, just, he's so young still in this season. And I think I actually did an episode about this right at the beginning of the year. I think there's so many parallels you can draw between how Hamilton started out at McLaren and Leclerc at Ferrari, where
very much so.
A lot of people were sort of saying, it was the two the world champion teammates and these new young guns, obviously an incredible junior career, both of them. But everybody was sort of saying, you know what, let's just give them a bit of time. They'll sort of get comfortable in the team, and then in a couple of years down the line, they'll then be. And then that's not what happened. Like Hamilton pitched up in Melbourne and outqualified Fernando Alonso.
Correct.
Not outqualified. Overtook Fernando Alonso at the
around
first
the
corner.
outside in the first corner. No, you're 100% right. I think Lewis in his first season won 4 races.
Yeah.
Leclerc's won two races in his first season with Ferrari. And you're right, that parallel is very, very distinctive. I don't think that Leclerc at this age had the kind of finesse that Lewis did. Mm-hmm. Lewis, I just think, is just a natural born talent. Leclerc is super, super fast, but is going to have to learn time management of his race. But that's understanding the car. It's much easier when you're in a car that that no matter what tire it's on, like a Mercedes, it's going to perform. Whereas in Ferrari, and we saw it happen to him in Austria, where he had a race that unfortunately the tires let him down. Leclerc is going to have to learn to manage how he races, and the person to learn that the most or the best from are the likes of Lewis Hamilton, the likes of Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah.
I would say those two are the guys that you got to sit there and say, hey, what did they do in that race? And why did they do that in that race? Oh, well, look, he started 15th and he finished in 8th. Oh, he started in 1st and he finished 1st. That's the one thing I think Charles Leclerc has to learn. And the two of them are just going to have to learn that if the one has got the upper hand, then just support him.
They're going to have to deal. And I think
flat out.
That's what we didn't see much of this year.
No, it was shocking.
I mean, the two it's like, sometimes it felt like they didn't come to sort of an understanding before the race started, or they didn't have, everything wasn't clear with how they need to deal with each other in situations like that. And then it all played out on the radio where the two drivers and Ferrari seemed to sort of been trying to figure it out as they were going on. Listen, okay, now what do we do? Now Leclerc's angry. How are we going to make this better? But now we can't make Vettel angry. Vettel did this. Like, it just became a bit of a mess.
It comes down to this simple thing, and the simple word is respect.
Yeah.
So the question is, number one, do they respect each other? Yes, they do, as racing drivers. No problem whatsoever. Clearly, they don't respect the team.
Yes.
Because if Bottas has a scream about Lewis, Toto Wolff will get on the radio, or James Allison will get on the radio, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Whereas with Ferrari, and Binotto has also had to try and find his feet, coming in, with so much, we're going to do this. Not that he said it, but everyone expected it. And then all of a sudden the wheels falling off, literally, of the car. Binotto's had a lot to learn, but Binotto is the one who's going to have to sort this out. Otherwise, his days are numbered as well.
Yeah, I think, where was it? There was one moment with Binotto that I just loved. I think, it was at the end of the Singapore Grand Prix, where, and obviously Leclerc was very upset because the undercuts, and then he came second, and then he was just whining the whole way through, like the whole race. And then the cool down lap after the race, I think, he was whining again. And I think Mattia Binotto just said, "Listen, good race. We'll talk about it afterwards." And Leclerc sort of said, "Yes, but," and then he just said, "Full stop." And that was the moment where I thought, if Binotto can have more of this, where you can just say,
correct.
You know what? Shut up, Charles. Like,
100%.
Stop it.
Yeah. Also, I remember one of the races this year, Magnussen, I think it was Canada, saying this is the worst car I've ever driven in my life, blah, 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 blah. And you get Gunther Steiner coming up on the radio and saying, Kevin, basically, that's enough. There we go. We're also all having tough days. That's it. It's over. And that, unfortunately, that's what you have to do. These guys are earning millions of dollars. They've got all these endorsements in the world. Most of them come from very privileged backgrounds. They've had everything their whole lives. And of course, this is what they've done since their karting days, is moan and moan and moan and moan. Now you got to sit there and say, hey, shut up. Just get on with it. Go and race.
It's more now than just doing your kart.
100%.
It's actually a bigger picture.
And you've got millions of people listening to you and watching you.
Yeah. So I think before we can move on and maybe talk about Ferrari and some other aspects of Ferrari, just the last thing I want to take a quick pit stop at is the Brazil incident where, where they came together. Now, I was quite vocal in my view and a lot of people said, no, Vettel was completely at fault. He came to the left and he drove into Charles and, how dare he not get a penalty? I'm of the view that Vettel really didn't do anything that controversial. I mean, I can go on YouTube and find tens of videos where drivers do that in a race, sort of, even on the straight, sort of start squeezing their opponent to, set up the best possible line for them into the corner. And what basically happened here, in my opinion, was Vettel did the same thing that a lot of people do. And Leclerc just decided that no, he will not move.
Just going to stay where he is.
And they came together.
I'm glad you bring that up because, I went and also defended Vettel to a point on it. I blame them both for the incident. Yes. But, if you look at the Brazilian Grand Prix and go way earlier into the race, don't forget Leclerc had to fight through the field.
That move on Norris.
That move on Norris. Yeah. It was like, wow, where did that come from? And, as we mentioned earlier in the podcast, Leclerc is a very aggressive driver and he won't take any prisoners, and he does put himself sometimes in compromising positions. We saw it also in Monza. He moves aggressively.
That move on Hamilton was like, I was sort of thinking, oof, that's almost, I would have actually given him probably a penalty or something. He got a warning, but I mean, he does skate sort of
he does.
the borders of acceptable.
There we go. So if we go to the Brazilian incident, yes, he made a great move on Vettel going into turn 1. And he had slightly better tires, but he knew going into turn 3 that the drag down to turn 4, Vettel was going to have the DRS and was going to be able to pass him regardless.
Yes.
So he should have sat there and said, listen, let the guy go. My tires are better. I'll take him on the next straight and I'll make sure that it sticks this time.
Yeah. So
he should have moved over a little bit to the left-hand side because he knew, regardless of anything, there was no ways that he could have been able to defend that position going into turn 4. And yet he just stayed on the line. Vettel was trying to get back onto a better racing line because he was squeezed onto the right-hand side, and they touched each other. So people say, Vettel, because he was upset that Leclerc passed him. Of course he was upset that Leclerc passed him, but he passed him back.
Would have been upset.
But he passed him back.
Yeah.
He passed him back and Leclerc should have moved over and sat there and taken it like a man and said, okay, no problem. I know that I've got the speed on him and I'll take him on the next lap. That's how I saw it.
No, I agree 100%. And, the FIA, especially when it comes to these incidents, they have this phrase that they use, predominantly at fault.
Yes.
And to decide whether it's a penalty or not is one driver has to be predominantly at fault. And I think that's a perfect example of not one driver being predominantly at fault. Vettel did things wrong. Leclerc did things wrong.
100%.
But, it happened.
And because it was between two teammates, it wasn't a McLaren taking out a Ferrari or Ferrari taking out a Mercedes or something like that. The stewards are also going to say, well, you know what? If anything, what did they do? They shot themselves in the foot and they both messed up each other's race and the team's race. So we'll let it go.
Yeah.
But a racing incident, they both were at fault, but it was not a completely Vettel fault. That's for sure. And without a doubt.
It sort of annoyed me that people tried to paint it.
Agreed.
Like because,
Agreed.
Vettel, he's had some shocking moments this year.
He hasn't had a great
year. Very stupid things, but that actually I don't think was that stupid.
No, not at all.
That was very legit.
Yeah.
But in any case, the last thing I want to talk about with Ferrari is this whole engine controversy. So
yes.
Obviously they pitched up in Australia even, and they had a very powerful engine. They already had a very good engine last year. And there was sort of slight whispers of controversy last year already about them burning oil, I think.
That's
in
correct.
The engine. And then this year, sort of, again, a powerful engine, and they had an advantage on the straights, but I think initially people just, pegged it down to them having this very efficient aerodynamic philosophy. And they had, just a slightly less draggy car, which then meant they had the advantage on the straights. And then I think after the summer break, they pitched up with their new spec engine in Belgium and then obviously in Monza, and they were just miles up the road.
Well, yeah, listen, Formula One, if there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
Formula One runs on three things.
Quite literally in this case.
Yes, yeah. Runs on three things. Rumors, money, and drama.
Yeah.
Okay. And petrol. It runs on petrol. There used to be tobacco, now it's petrol.
Yeah.
So what has Ferrari done? Have they been found guilty of anything? Is there some suspicion? Yes, there's suspicion.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, Mercedes and specifically Red Bull and Honda don't believe that Ferrari can be making this amount of power.
Yeah, and I think...
Or can they?
I think what put the red flag for me is, given how far along we are in this engine formula, it's now been, 6 years of this engine. For them to find that big of a step over their competitors all at once, that's historically where, red flags would go up. And, I still say they could have a completely legitimate reason that they've discovered something in the regulations that allowed them to do what they're doing. Mercedes and Red Bull feel that, if there was anything to find, they would have found it by now, the others.
Correct.
So I just find it fascinating. And now there's even a little tail added onto the whole intrigue with what happened in Abu Dhabi with the whole,
Yes, with the extra fuel.
The extra fuel that they put in.
Well, let me tackle that one first. The extra fuel issue is actually, it's something so pathetic, in my opinion. The teams are allowed 115 kilograms of fuel in the car, but they are under obligation to tell the FIA how much fuel they're putting in the car for that specific race.
Yes.
So they sat and said, no, we're putting in 94 litres for Charles Leclerc's car. The next minute, all of a sudden, they say, oh, no, sorry, it's 99 litres. It's still way under the 115 litres that they are actually allowed to. So why must this be an issue? So I think it's a mountain out of a molehill.
I also think so. I think it was just
and 50,000 euros, for 10,000 euros a litre that they got fined. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
I find that just pathetic what has happened there. So that's the fuel issue. The engine issue. Now, this is where it gets very, very complicated. There's all of this rumor that, well, they've got, another extra flow meter for the fuel in the engine. So through a request, which wasn't a formal request, but conversation with people like Red Bull and Mercedes, the FIA went to Ferrari and said, listen, we want to have a look at everything, and then took the engine and had a look at it with the FIA, with the Ferrari engineers there as well, had a look at everything and came out with a directive that's saying from 2020, there needs to be 2 flow meters.
Yes.
Okay. To measure this or whatever. Now, this is where it's quite complicated, because Ferrari might have found something, but now for them now to expose this to Mercedes and to Honda and to Renault means that they've given away their secret.
Yeah.
So the FIA also can't sit there and say, Ferrari have got this.
Yes.
If the Ferrari were cheating, let's use that word very, very cautiously. If Ferrari were found to have been doing something illegal, let's rather say that, the FIA would have had to have come out and said, Ferrari have been found to be doing X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
And because of that, we have now done are implementing X.
Yeah.
All they've come out and said is that next year in 2020, there's got to be a second flow meter for something. So number one, they haven't said that Ferrari have done anything illegal. So we have to believe that what Ferrari have found has been slightly curtailed by the FIA, but it is definitely not illegal.
I also don't think so. And I just find this whole process of technical directives to be very amusing.
No, it's hysterical.
It's literally like a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
So they're literally going, okay, is it this? Or no, what the teams do, they go to the FIA and say, so FIA, I want to do this with my engine. Is it allowed? And then they have to say, no, it's not allowed. And then they issue the technical directive, and then the other teams just wait and they see what happens with Ferrari. Okay, so that didn't work. Okay, next idea. So FIA, is burning fuel from the intercooler allowed? Then the FIA says no. And then they issue another technical directive, and then the teams just wait and see what happens. I just think, I mean...
Well, the whole thing about it is, number one, you don't want any team doing anything illegal. You don't want any form of cheating, which is fair enough. But, that's the way. Oh, by the way, we believe that if you have a plastic cooler in the back of the exhaust, all of a sudden this creates more power. Can we have one of those? No, you can't. Okay. Cross that off. They don't have one of those.
Yeah, they literally, I think they have like a shopping list.
Of
ideas.
Agreed. So, hopefully we just find some parity that next year we still see the Ferrari as quick as it was during the course of this year.
Yes.
And the likes of, Renault all of a sudden look super fast, which is fantastic to see. Honda look great, and Mercedes are always great. So if they're all on the same kind of, benchmark, if they're all as fast as each other, that's all we actually want.
No, I agree.
That's all
100%.
we want. Yeah.
So, last thing about Ferrari before we can move on. What do you think? What are their chances for 2020? And Mattia Binotto came out with a perler of a quote the other day, and I just laughed where he said, we lost the 2019 championships when he designed the car for 2018. And I was just saying, well, you don't say. And they've lost the 2018 championship and they were designing the 2017 or the 2018 car. So, what do you think? How's their 2020 car design going to go, do you think?
I think they would have learnt a lot. The fundamental flaw with the Ferrari car is the low speed cornering speed. And they know that. However, they did also pick up something which was completely different to what they had in 2018. And all of a sudden, we saw it actually from the third or fourth race early on in the season, that all of a sudden they couldn't get these tires to work. the way that Ferrari always used to be able to do that. So I think they would have learned from their mistakes. There's no fundamental change in what the cars are going to look like for 2020. So, if they adopt a strategy that looks more like the Mercedes and try and figure out what Mercedes and Red Bull are doing in the slow speed corners, they should be very, very strong.
Yeah.
Having said that, the way that Red Bull have finished off the season, they got more worries than just Mercedes next year. But I do think they've got a good chance.
Okay, cool. Well, you heard it here first, guys. So let's maybe take a stroll and talk about the midfield teams. I don't think we have to go into so much detail, but
okay.
So obviously McLaren, I think, according to me, definitely the most improved team of the year. I don't think that's
phenomenal.
A difficult one to call. I think for them, they just seem to be in a really good place in terms of their entire organization, the drivers, the management, the sort of technical people that they have there. I really, really hope they can somehow make not maybe as big of a gain, but a similar type of step gain between this year and next year, so they can be up there. They're competing.
I agreed. McLaren have had a fantastic season. I think both Norris and Sainz are just two lovely young men, but also fabulous racing drivers.
Yes.
Incredibly quick, and very determined. I think the introduction of Andreas Seidel from Porsche has made a massive difference. And it reminds me of sort of the Ron Dennis days where it's meticulous the way that it goes. It's the German way of doing things, which is brilliant. My only concern for them for 2020 is that in 2021, they're moving to Honda, to Mercedes. So next year they've got Renault. Renault, number one, will be very upset that they got beaten by a factory concern this year. And next year, if there are improvements in the Renault engine, although, as you say, we are sort of at the end of the stream of this kind of engine, but if there are any improvements, are McLaren going to get those benefits as well? But agreed. In terms of the midfield, McLaren, I'm just so happy to see them, up there again and competing. And Sainz's podium in Brazil was just so gratifying, even though he wasn't on the podium. It was just wonderful for him and the team, to achieve that. It was a brilliant drive.
Now, as I've mentioned on a couple of my previous episodes, I have a bee in my bonnet about Carlos Sainz, because I just think that, and I think it's now starting to sort of be echoed across the Formula One world, is that he's such an underrated driver. Maybe now I think he's coming into people are starting to notice him now, but even like when he was Max Verstappen's teammate back in 2015, I just thought that this guy, like, obviously there's so much noise about Verstappen at that point in time, but this other new guy in Toro Rosso is actually, he's driving with house money as well, because I think he's very good in terms of an all-round package.
Oh, he's phenomenal. And this year, he really shone brilliantly. And don't forget, when he was a teammate with Max Verstappen, Max didn't walk all over him like Max has done with everybody else. And, together with maybe some clever management, they sat and said, listen, Max is golden boy there. We saw Ricciardo go. We've seen Sainz go. And make that move and go into the likes of McLaren. And I must tell you, I think this young Lando Norris pushing Sainz, initially it was, okay, let's see what this guy can do. And Norris all of a sudden pushing Sainz, it lifted Carlos Sainz to another level. And Carlos Sainz, yes, he might have lost 11-10 in the qualifying battle or whatever, but over a full race weekend, Carlos Sainz to me is within the top 5 top drivers on the grid.
No, I think he's excellent.
Yeah.
Lando Norris as well, such an impressive.
He's divine, this guy.
First year, and he's just a great personality.
Oh, he's hysterical.
I think. What excites me a bit is it's nice to see these young drivers coming to Formula One. They have a different way of going about just interaction with the team, interaction with the fans, just sort of their way of projecting the sport, I think, into the world is very different. And I find it very refreshing.
I also do, and it took me a bit to get used to it, because I'm used to the old staid kind of way,
Yes.
Tinus of, well, this is how you come in, and you don't smile at cameras, you don't, sign autographs. All of a sudden you get these guys who are sitting on, playing on their PlayStations when it's, between practice sessions against each other. They chat to each other. They've raced with each other all of the time, just as all of the other drivers did in the years gone by.
Yeah.
But they never had this kind of camaraderie. But let's take that word camaraderie until all of a sudden we go proper racing.
Yes.
And we saw a little incident with Lando and Albon, this year, and they laughed it off with each other. Believe you me, those situations are going to get much more complicated
when it's for the championship and when it's for race wins, then it's a whole different kettle of fish.
It's going to get a lot more complicated as they get older and as we get further into Formula One. But I think that's also terrific because you're going to see the strength of characters coming out.
Yeah, no, great. I agree definitely. And I do think with Sainz and Norris and the driver lineup that McLaren has, it's a bright future. And I hope that team can go from strength to strength. Now, a team we can't really say that, about this year was Renault, where I think, and obviously if you sort of look at the tail of the tape, it doesn't make for that great of a read. But I think fundamentally they actually had a pretty good car. Or I think maybe the second half of the season specifically, but they just, similar to Ferrari, I think in a sense, they just somehow managed to mess it up for themselves, more often than not.
Yeah, two great drivers in Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. I mean, I have a soft spot for Hülkenberg, but, I also had a soft spot for Jarno Trulli all those years back as well. But, I've had a problem with the Renault organization, and it's a personal thing, with Cyril Abiteboul. I do not believe that he's the right person to be running this team. He doesn't have that French flair, which you need. And he's more of a complainer as opposed to a solution kind of man. I also unfortunately think that everything that has happened with Carlos Ghosn, the big boss of Renault, Nissan worldwide, and getting it, arrested in Japan and those things, I think have unsettled the organization, and their future in Formula One has become a little bit difficult to predict. But having said that, the two drivers should have done more. I think the package was good enough. The Renault engine might not have been the fastest, but as a package, it was a relatively or pretty decent car. It was on the same kind of level as the McLaren.
Yeah, I think you can see, and especially at the end of the year, they were basically, I think, head to head with McLaren in terms of raw speed.
There we go. And you've got two much more experienced racing drivers. They should have extracted a lot more out of the Renault car. Ironically, at the beginning of the season, I sat and said, watch out for Renault. This is going to be the team to watch. And unfortunately, it was the team to watch, but for no reason other than, oh my gosh, this is so disappointing. So sadly, they did not live up to expectation, and they're going to have to pull something out massive in 2020 in order to keep the likes of Danny Ricciardo.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think Ricciardo has sort of hedged his bets now with the Renault team. And I think he's sort of trying to stay positive and trying to speak positivity into the world. But I mean, I think, this is his first year there. I think if next year goes in a similar way, I don't really see him saying too many nice things.
No, exactly. And also, money is very important. You've got a very limited career when you're in professional sport. But winning trophies is much more important, in this kind of game. And it's amazing. I'm just going to refer to golf. Tommy Fleetwood won the Nedbank Challenge. And, he was asked or told, geez, you've just won $2.5 million. And he went, the money, we can all make good livings nowadays, playing golf without even winning tournaments, but winning the trophy is the most important thing.
That's why they're there.
Exactly. And Ricciardo wants to win trophies. He's got enough money now. So,
I agree.
They're going to have to up their game.
No, I hope they do up their game as well.
Yeah, because for sure. Agreed. I love Renault.
They have the theoretical potential of being one of the top teams.
And they're Renault. They've been around in Formula One, for years and come back. And I mean, Renault's Renault. It's part of the DNA of F1.
No, I agree 100%. So, I think let's hold thumbs.
Yeah, let's hope so.
If they can do something.
Yeah, let's see what Ocon can do against Ricciardo. That'll be interesting.
Ocon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be potentially explosive.
Very, very explosive.
Because Ocon gave Sergio Perez all of the issues when they were at Force India.
Correct.
Because I think Ocon is actually very good.
I think he's very, very, very quick.
I think I think because Perez is such an underrated driver, him going up against Ocon and Ocon giving him so much trouble, I think says more about how good Esteban Ocon is than what maybe we think.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And Perez, I agree, is one of the most underrated drivers. His luck unfortunately turned when he went to McLaren, and that tainted him.
That's actually so sad to think about how
it just messed
everything
up.
One can just ruin, like, basically your entire career is effectively takes a different direction than what they potentially should have.
You know, he was lucky that he managed to stay in Formula One. If you go back many, many years ago, Michael Andretti came into McLaren to be the teammate of Senna.
Yeah.
And after 8 races, they just said, cheers, you're out of here. You're gone. Perez was lucky that, you know, he had some serious backers. And he's proven his worth. He's proven his worth. Time in it. He has a couple of incidents here and there, but I mean, he's a properly good racing driver.
No, that guy, and I think in terms of racecraft and managing a race, I don't think there are many guys that's better than him.
I'm a big supporter, of Perez.
I think, and now let's maybe talk about his teammates now that we've sort of segued into Racing Point. Now, Lance Stroll gets a lot of flack. And I'm typically one that would try and say no, but actually, you know, let's look at this or this or this. But, you know, and he's had the almost podium in Germany, and he got that podium in Baku. But other than that, there really hasn't been much for me personally where I thought, you know what, Stroll, if money wasn't an object, Stroll should have still been in that seat. Because I think at the moment, for me, he's not proving himself to be worthy of being in the second Racing Point seat, but I'm happy to be disagreed with.
Yeah, listen, I think you bring up a very good point, you know, and people will look at Stroll and look at his qualifying record against Perez this year, which was abysmal. His racecraft, though, is still, I think, pretty decent. Okay, it is pretty decent. The car has been difficult this year. Yes. And we have to acknowledge that. But his racecraft is still pretty decent. And a guy like, you know, Lance Stroll is always going to have huge pressure against him. Billionaire dad, bought a team. That's why you're there. He's tried his best along the way. He's been much less vocal this year than he was in 2018 when he first came in.
I think a good thing.
Very, very good thing. And it's basically sat there and says, Lance, you know what, just go there, take the hiding that you're getting and try and do a little bit better. I mean, if he didn't have the money, would he have the seat? You know, you can say that about 4 or 5 other drivers down in the world of Formula One. So we've got to be careful with that. I feel sorry for him in a way, but this is the point that I'm trying to make here. We, unfortunately, when we're watching races on TV, Tinus, we get the top guys racing over there, and if somebody's out in the front, we carry on watching that. You and I know when we're watching races, we're watching live times, you're saying, geez, by the way, Stroll's only half a second behind Raikkonen. Yeah. Why aren't we watching this? Yeah. Next minute, Stroll's past Raikkonen, and we see it 3 minutes later in a replay.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we don't see a tremendous amount of this midfield action. That is fantastic racing. And Stroll is part of some of that.
No, that's true.
It's one of those. Would he have a seat? I don't know, but he's got the seat. Next year he has to improve.
I think next year is an important year for him.
He has to. He's got to be on the level with Perez. Else, you know, even his father can't save him. Otherwise, that whole team disappears because nobody will want to go drive there.
No, I agree 100%. Let's maybe talk about Alpha next. You're obviously another team that you love. Now, I don't really know what to make of Alpha sitting at, you know, the end of the year. Halfway through the year, I would have said, you know, they're actually doing pretty good. Raikkonen was doing amazingly well for a stretch of races there. And then somewhere, I think at around Monza, it just sort of went south for them, and they just haven't been able to pull it back. And I can't put my finger on what was the problem. Like, I don't think there's like one over sort of arching reason for the sudden drop off in Alfa Romeo's performance.
Listen, it's a Swiss team. And if you look at Sauber in Formula One over the years, they either start off brilliantly and then taper off, or they start off shockingly and then all of a sudden come good.
Yeah.
They've never had a consistent season. They just do not know how to do. I don't know if it's the Swiss cheese or whatever they do.
But it's so anti-Swiss. You'd imagine the Swiss would be very, metronomic, precise.
Until you go to Switzerland and you go, that it's not little snowy white trees and that kind of stuff. Listen, it's a fantastic place and they're fantastic people. But somewhere along the line, Sauber and together with Alfa Romeo just started off brilliantly. And then from Germany, when they had that whole clutch issue in Germany, where they were caught with adjusting the clutch and they lost their points. Somehow everything went bad from there. And you know what? Thank goodness for Kimi Räikkönen, because if Räikkönen wasn't in that team, if it was Ericsson and Giovinazzi, with the greatest respect to both of them, they would have maybe got 3 points.
I agree.
I mean, Giovinazzi finished, I think, with 3 or 4 points.
No, I think 4.
4. That they would have had 4 points. Kimi got them up into 8th in the World Championship. So Alfa Romeo deserved to be there. I don't know if this partnership with Sauber is going to last. In my opinion, Ferrari or FCA, Fiat Chrysler, should sit there and say, what do you want for the team? Buy the whole team out. Become an Alfa Romeo team. Stick in your secondary drivers that you want from your Ferrari team, like your Mick Schumachers or whatever. Get them learning how to go and race their craft there. Help them as much as possible and make sure that Alfa's up there with the likes of McLaren. Then all of a sudden Ferrari have got a chance.
No,
Besides, I mean, the Haas and the Alfa Romeo team finished second and third last, whereas Ferrari finished second.
Yeah.
And those are the only 3 powered, Ferrari powered engine.
No, I agree.
It's not good enough. Not good enough.
Speaking of Haas,
Gosh, shame.
That's been the most befuddling team that I think ever seen in Formula One, where they can be 5th, 4th or 5th in qualifying. The next day, it's like they're standing still. They're just being passed 18th on the straights.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And obviously then they also don't have the 2 easiest drivers, I think, to deal with in terms of personality and in terms of overall approach to racing a car. It's been a messy season for us.
No, listen, I'm surprised that they still kept half the personnel, because it really was a difficult season. I mean, besides the fact that whole Rich Energy sponsorship, what a disaster that was. And then on top of it, and maybe that's also a reason why they kept Romain Grosjean, because Grosjean from day one, when he raced that car in Australia, said, okay, and they went to Bahrain or 3 or 4 races later with a new package or new floor or whatever, and he sat and said, listen, guys, this is worse. Went back to Australian setup, and had the powers that be at Haas actually listened to Grosjean.
Yeah.
And when he said, listen, we've gone in the wrong direction, they might have had a slightly different season. But you know what? Well done to the drivers for just getting through the season, but wow, that's a season to forget.
No, what I find just laughable is how the Australia Melbourne spec at the beginning of the year, they were putting it on. When was it? Like in the US.
Yeah.
And it was faster, and they were still competitive, which shows, I think, fundamentally, the car was actually pretty good. There was just something
they just went the wrong way somewhere.
And they went on a bit of a red herring or on a bit of a rabbit hole, and then
No. Listen, it was a tough year for them. I mean, and Grosjean, yes, he can moan like a stuck pig, but on his day, Grosjean can be as quick as anybody in the world.
Incredibly fast.
And Magnussen as well, so, I mean, those are 2 very, very good drivers. And if they get, a car that's just 50% better than last year, watch out for them. They'll be hurting the likes of, the Sainzes and the Ricardos, next year. So. Yeah. Just give them a better car.
Okay, well, let's talk about maybe the ugly ducklings of 2019. And given that we just spoke about Haas and all of their struggles, for Williams to be, I think, classified the ugly ducklings is quite an achievement. Don't have to get into their struggles in too much detail, but all I can say is I don't know what, they need to somehow hit the road running next year. Not like what happened this year, where they were behind with the car wasn't ready. By the time they had to test, they missed days of testing. Like, that can't happen again next year.
I mean, this is Williams. This is the Williams organization. And I know I can reflect and go, geez, in the 90s, this is what they do. This is now a new generation.
Yeah.
This is new. However, it is still a very, very powerful name in the world of Formula One. And to see these kind of struggles, number one is sad, but number two, very worrying. Very, very worrying. So yes, hitting the road running. Where they're getting the finances from. They're massive engineering works. They do a lot of work when it comes to, the battery technology for Formula E and they, Williams Automotive. But that even took a pounding this year because of the trying to finance their Formula One team. I know they've got Rocket there as a sponsor, but, and I don't want to point fingers at someone like Claire Williams, but, everywhere you read, it seems as though the Claire is not the most well-liked person. In terms of her management style. And that could well be an issue. And they've got a talent in George Russell that is second to none. And they're going to lose him, very, very quickly. If they don't do something radically different and drastic in order to just, fight with Haas and Alfa Romeo at this stage.
Well, it's concerning. You mentioned George Russell because I think
he's wasted. He's wasted in that car,
and that is very worrying to me.
No, it's shocking.
I think that guy needs to be.
We're talking about a Lance Stroll, for example, in a racing point. And Stroll was in Williams.
Yeah.
Now you sit and go, you got George Russell, the Formula 2 champion, a clinically fast racing driver who just yesterday and the day before in Abu Dhabi, again was the quickest person in the Mercedes W10.
Yes.
Quicker than the likes of Bottas, quicker than the likes of Hamilton.
Yeah.
In this car, it just shows you what this guy can actually bring. And he's in a car where, yes, he outqualified his teammate 21-20 to 0, but he was still on average a second behind anybody else. So he had no one to race against. I feel desperate for him. He doesn't deserve this.
So I really hope, I don't know, Toto Wolff needs to make something happen for him because I think Russell can do one more year at Williams if Williams don't improve dramatically. And then after that, they need to find him another seat.
100%.
Otherwise, Mercedes is going to lose him because I think there are probably going to be other teams that are going to be waiting in line to snatch him up.
But let me tell you what the trump card for George Russell this year has been. Mm-hmm. Everyone expected Ocon to go to Mercedes. Everyone expected Bottas to be given the boot. Yes. Bottas was kept because they had to keep him. There's no ways they could let him go, especially after the way he started the season. All of a sudden, Toto's golden boy, Esteban Ocon, is now a Renault driver.
Yeah, and he's Renault. He's not on loan.
Yeah, now he's Renault.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, George Russell wakes up and goes, has this just happened? That's his entry into Mercedes in 2021.
No, I
hope so.
I secretly hope that happens.
He deserves a shot. I mean, this kid is phenomenally fast and a brilliant racer. Yeah, he reminds me of Alain Prost. He's so methodical. He's so
and a good head on his shoulders
and so quick as well when he needs to be. That's what you only have to be as fast as you need to be to win a race.
Yeah.
Or to beat the person behind you. It doesn't mean you have to go and blitz records. As long as you're faster than the guy behind you.
That's all you want.
That's all you need.
And I encourage people to go and look at how well George Russell did in Hungary. Because
phenomenal.
Hungary was the only sort of race where Williams wasn't so far off the pace that they were in the class of their own. Russell there, how close he was into getting into Q2 was actually
unbelievable.
Actually crazy.
It is bizarre that that Kubica was the one who got the only point for them, and that was in Germany. But George Russell, do not underestimate this kid. If you you want to back someone, I would back George Russell.
No, agree 100%.
Yeah.
Now we've talked about all of the teams, and we've kept you guys busy with a lot of the drivers and our thoughts on them. Sasha, I want to quickly just touch on one or two sort of other developments over the year in Formula One. The first being this let them race philosophy. Now, obviously, I think what kickstarted the whole conversation, or maybe not kickstarted, sort of set the flame alight was the whole controversial decision that was made with Hamilton and Vettel in Canada, where Vettel was given the 5-second penalty. And then obviously there was a massive outcry after that, which then meant to a lot of people taking the lens of, let them race. don't penalize if not absolutely necessary. And we've seen it come through in a few iterations. Obviously, Leclerc and Verstappen in Austria was an example of that. A couple of others where they sort of didn't give penalties because they said no. The black and white flag they gave Leclerc in Monza.
Yeah.
So what's your view on that?
Okay, very, very, very important and very, very good point. What I think we have always been calling for many, many years is just one word: consistency, and consistency in the rules and how they are applied. Okay.
Yes.
So what happened in Canada, for example, and that's where it got the whole ball rolling, where all of a sudden Vettel goes off the track, comes back on the track. Lewis goes, I think I was a bit unhappy, blah, 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 blah. You can argue to the cows come home. Vettel all of a sudden gets given a 5-second penalty. The world goes crazy because all of a sudden they show Lewis Hamilton pushing Danny Ricciardo off in Monaco and
yes,
squeezing him into the wall, but all of a sudden there's no penalty.
Yeah.
So what do? You say, but it's unfair. And you go, no, be consistent. Just be consistent. So after that, Michael Massey came out and sat there and said, listen, we've chatted with the drivers and now we are going to try and be more consistent with all of the rules. So now it's a question of, did he push him off the track? Is it worth investigating? For example, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc in Austria. Max was going to pass him regardless.
Yeah.
His tires were gone for Leclerc. But it was still something to sit there and say, hold on a second. He did forcibly push him off the track.
Yeah.
Which you go, okay, well, are they racing? Should they be penalized? So it is a difficult one to manage when it comes to these kind of incidents. But all you want is some kind of consistency. So if they do not penalize Max Verstappen for pushing Charles Leclerc off the track in Austria, then if you go to the next race, if somebody else is all of a sudden pushing someone else off the track, then you cannot penalize them, depending on the severity of what that incident is.
I think to maybe add to that is that the only issue with that is just how unique all of these incidents are, because someone's pushing you off the track, but there's a whole load of other things going on.
Correct.
In that specific case, that's different from the one before. Like you mentioned, the whole Hamilton-Ricciardo incident and in Monaco, and that was how that was compared to Vettel and Vettel and Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I think I do agree 100% consistency is key. And I do think that, and people also are very up in arms about, how complicated and complex the rules are now and but that's the teams ask for that for exactly this reason, where they said, if it's black and white, then it can be applied according to that, which would probably mean more consistency.
Correct.
Where if you didn't have these sort of hard and fast rules about how drivers should go into battle, then we're going to see how opinions are going to start coming into it.
100%. I mean, listen, if you go into Formula 3 and Formula 2, where they don't have as severe or complicated rules in Formula 1, all of a sudden these guys are taking each other out at every other, corner. You've always got to remember, this is open wheel racing. There is a distinct difference between this and closed wheel racing, tin top cars, world endurance cars. And also there is an unwritten rule in open wheel racing, and that is to give the person enough space.
Yes.
That's what it is, because you know that if you do touch wheels, the chances of both of you getting taken out of the race is very, very high. It's not like, you're bashing a door, taking a mirror off. So these guys, don't forget, these guys have been doing it their whole lives. They do know about these things, but of course they're going to push the boundaries.
But you give them a hand and they'll take the whole arm.
Of course they will. But if you look at what Max did to Charles, and then I think you go back 2 or 3 races later or whatever, and Charles pushed Max, I think 2 or 3 times off Silverstone. So you go, well, these guys know how to play, and then they go, hey, it now all of us becomes, I've got this newfound respect for you, and I know that next time I'm going to have to give a little bit of space because I know you're not going to do it and I'm not going to do it.
And even Hamilton said after Monza, so that incident with Leclerc.
With Leclerc.
So they asked him about it afterwards, obviously, and he said, well, he thinks it was a bit, borderline. It wasn't his understanding that they could drive like that, but now he knows. He said, so now that he knows, I mean, I think.
But Tinus, don't forget, he's had 12 years of racing in Formula One. When he was in 2007 and 2008, he would have done exactly the same thing. Yeah. So, Lewis was just playing the why. Oh, he's a very clever man. he was playing oh, really? Is that how it goes? Don't forget, everything Lewis says on his pit to car radio, just take with a pinch of salt.
No, definitely.
100%, because he knows that everybody else is listening to it. And as soon as he says, oh, my tires are going off. Oh, Lewis's tires are going. No, they're not. Believe him, he's still there.
He puts in a fastest lap.
Yeah, exactly. Continue. So you know what? We know how to play the game. But I think it was also important for someone like an experienced person like Lewis to sit there and say, guys, I've been there. I've done that. I can also play this game. And you knew coming in here, which is fantastic. But don't think that I'm just going to bounce out of the way for you.
And he also said, well, if he wasn't in the championship fight, he would have not backed out and they would have collided.
Exactly.
And, then it would have gone
then
down.
It would have been a mess.
It would have been a massive mess.
Especially in Italy.
Yes. So, I mean, thank goodness that.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't want that to happen.
But I think what we can also maybe talk about, Sasha, is the overall standard of the races this year. And it's been it's been a contentious topic, I think, over the past decade, especially, with a lot of different people coming up with different ideas of improving their races and why they think, what they think makes a good race or not. I think this year we've had some incredible, even though the championship fight itself wasn't necessarily that close, but the race, we've had some incredible races this year. If you think about Austria and Monaco, even Monaco with Hamilton and Verstappen.
Right. Going all the way to the end.
And Silverstone, you've spoken about the Leclerc and Verstappen going,
exactly.
wheel to wheel. Germany was mad.
The racing itself was phenomenal. I think where all of a sudden we did have a little bit of an issue, Tinus, is we got to Canada and we had this controversy, massive controversy. Straight after that, we went to Paul Ricard, which was just...
It was dull.
It was, dull is being very polite. It's a magnificent circuit. It's probably the best facility in the world when it comes to going to test cars. The problem is that you can run off there for years and years and years. So it just doesn't allow for spectacular racing. And unfortunately, everyone then, started sitting and saying, this is now ridiculous, because Mercedes had won every single race up to then. Canada could have been, a win for Ferrari. And now all of a sudden we had these issues. So the world was saying Formula One is in a disaster. Then we had Austria, UK, Germany, Hungary, Belgium, Italy, Singapore.
All of them.
7 in a row. Unbelievable races, different winners. Not to say that all of a sudden makes it fantastic, but also, traditional tracks. Austria's an old track.
Yes.
UK's an old track. Germany, which we're going to lose now. Belgium, Hungary, Belgium, Italy, and Singapore. Okay, under the lights, it's always going to be a little bit different. But I mean, just a spectacular place. The problem, and it's not a problem. Formula One is so fast. It's so technical. It is so advanced of any other kind of racing in the world that no matter what track you're on, they will find a way to go around it faster. And where there were traditional overtaking points on a normal track, Formula One can turn it into a straight line, fast corner.
Yes.
That is what Formula One is about. So people saying, oh, the Herman Tilke tracks are rubbish or whatever. They're not. Formula One is just that good. That's how it is. And that's how it always will be.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And, but what I did find refreshing, if you listed all of those races now, is they were all great for different reasons, which I thought was very encouraging.
Yeah.
And I think also shows us that there's no golden formula for what's going to make a good Formula One race. I think people have been sort of hunting for that. I think obviously now, if you remember Canada in 2011 with the tires.
Oh, jeez.
And then that meant that the Formula One decided, no, we need these high degradation tires that falls off the cliff, and that's going to make it amazing. And then they didn't realize that all that's going to happen is, as you said, it's Formula One. You have the smartest people in the world working on finding solutions to these problems. They've figured out that, actually, it's going to be faster if they just don't use the tires and still make one pit stop and just don't use the tires properly. And then we had that whole drama with everybody's up in arms because everybody's tire saving and fuel saving.
Slowing down and,
So I just think that what happened this year shows us that there isn't a hard and fast rule of what makes a good Formula One race. Sometimes a good Formula One race happens when you least expect it. Like, I mean, in Brazil, it was a very good race for, the first, 60 laps. And then all of a sudden, it just
came alive.
Yeah, just things went crazy.
Yeah, but and I said it also the other day, regardless of the safety car in Brazil, I mean, the Bottas brought out the safety car. Regardless of that, it still would have been a magnificent race.
Agreed.
It just lends itself to that. And I agree, they throw up different kinds of, elements at every single Formula One race. Don't forget, there's so many people who watch, oh no, I'm a Mercedes and a Lewis Hamilton fan. And if Lewis doesn't win, they're a little bit upset. Or if Ferrari doesn't win, they're a little bit upset. But week in and week out, those people are still there watching because as much as you sit and go, oh, well, Lewis is on pole again and Valtteri's next to him, there is an unpredictability. And it's not because that the cars are unreliable like in the old days and you're going to have engine failures. There's just an unpredictability that something strange can happen. And sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. That's the beauty of live sport as well. When you're watching things live, you don't know what's going to happen. And if you go and watch a soccer game and you're there for 90 minutes and no one scores a goal, are you disappointed? Of course you are. But would you do it again? Of course you would.
Yeah, I agree.
That's as simple as it is.
So, Sasha, favorite race of the year?
Sure. Brazil has got to be right up there. In a way, Monza, because it was Leclerc's first win. But I think, to me, Germany just threw up so many different things. I mean, Leclerc crashed, Vettel crashed, Bottas crashed, Lewis managed to get out of it. It was just a fantastic Grand Prix. It was mental.
It was too chaotic for my poor heart, actually. So I think because of that, I'll say my favorite race of the year was actually Silverstone.
Oh, also stunning race.
I just remember at the start, it was Hamilton and Bottas going wheel to wheel.
Wheel to wheel.
Like, it was that was amazing already by itself.
It was wonderful,
and then watching Leclerc and Verstappen going at it.
That was brilliant.
I mean, literally lap after lap, they were side to side.
And that was that sort of payback for Austria from Leclerc as well.
It was fantastic. Yeah. And then, I mean, okay, Vettel drove into the back of Verstappen, so let's just not talk about that.
Yeah, no, that was a bit...
and then just also the drive from Hamilton was, I thought, just from a sort of fan perspective, so brilliant. Well done, where he put in that late fastest lap and he just basically outraced Bottas so completely.
It was phenomenal.
So I'd say that was my favorite race of the year. And then I think, and if you've listened to some of my previous episodes, is after every race recap, I hand out 3 very special awards to a driver, and I'd like the two of us to maybe decide amongst ourselves who should be the overall winner of each and every specific award for the season.
Okay.
So the first award, and this is called the TF1 Awards ceremony as well.
Yeah.
So the first award is the Pastor Maldonado Award for most dunderheaded deed.
Okay.
So I think obviously Ferrari comes with a whole portfolio of options.
Yeah, exactly.
So they have many to choose from. So they'll probably land on something they did. A couple that comes to mind for me is their blunder in Monaco, where they sort of didn't figure out that Leclerc wasn't going to make it out of Q1. They didn't send him out again.
And then they did it in Abu Dhabi again. I mean, Monaco is a disaster.
Yeah.
So okay.
That was one. There are so many.
I've got to say, Mercedes in Germany.
That pit stop, yes.
The pit stop for Lewis.
54-second pit stop.
That all of a sudden, right in the beginning of the show, you said they did show human side, and that was their human side. All of a sudden you went, oh my word, this is Mercedes fumbling.
I just imagine like a voiceover in German going, oh no, this hasn't gone to plan. and then they're just running around sort of not knowing what to do. Hamilton is sitting in the pits. They didn't have a front wing. They didn't have the tires.
It was a comedy of errors.
It was a bit farcical, yes.
Yeah.
So definitely I think those. And then the last one, probably I would say a contender would be a Vettel in Monza. Vettel spinning on his own for no apparent reason, and then rejoining the track unsafely.
Yeah.
I think between those four, probably. Who do you think?
I've got to give it to Vettel. As much as Ferrari blundered all over the place, Mercedes in Germany, I think Vettel at Monza, spinning on your own and then sort of getting upset about it and then coming onto the track and getting the 10-second penalty. Oh no. Yeah. That's the Pastor Maldonado award from my side.
100%
and yours?
agree. No, I think I agree with that.
Okay.
I just remember watching that going on. I was like, Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah.
You are a 4-time world champion. What are you doing? Like, I just started thinking like, and I, how you're a Vettel fan. I was always I always thought like, Vettel, he had a fast car, but then over recent sort of digging into F1 a bit more as I've done this year, I've grown to appreciate actually Sebastian Vettel's abilities. But then that day I was just thinking, what is he doing?
Yeah, I know. It was just
unacceptable.
No. Yeah. No. It wasn't good.
All right. So the next award is the Lewis Hamilton #Blessed Award.
Okay.
For the luckiest driver, this year. So my go-to candidate for this is always old Lance Stroll.
Yes.
For having daddy's money to get him a nice warm seat in Racing Point.
Yes.
So I'd say he's definitely a candidate this year.
Okay.
Who else can we think? Who's had some lucky things happen to them? I think Daniel Kvyat in Germany. He got that podium that he got. He got a bit lucky with the pit stop there. I think on the cards, I think also on balance, Albon probably drove the better race between the two of them in the Toro Rosso.
No, fair enough.
He just put it at the exact right time and he got that very exciting podium in Germany. I think those are the two that springs to mind for me.
Yeah, I think I've also got to throw in Robert Kubica getting the point in Germany.
Yes.
Because, they were so far away from getting anything, Stroll, Kvyat, Germany. Oh, geez, this is a difficult one. The Lewis Blesser Award.
I'd give it actually to Kubica because
I give it to Lewis in Germany.
Oh,
I give it to Lewis. I tell you, I give it to Lewis in Germany, even though I think he finished 9th in the race.
Yeah, well, no, he actually finished out of the points.
Yes, and then he got it because of the Alfa Romeo.
Yes.
I give it to Lewis because, that was a race that Valtteri really could have put his championship back on track against Lewis Hamilton. Lewis had that terrible pit stop tragedy, and then lands up actually gaining 2 points on his rival where he should have been 25 points behind. So I'm actually going to give Lewis's Blesser to Lewis. That's mine.
I think I'm happy with that. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And then the last award that I always give is the Nico Hulkenberg Podium Award for unluckiest driver. And a few examples here as well. Alex Albon in Brazil.
Sure.
I think
that was in Bahrain.
That was a horrible one. Those are probably the two front runners. I think Lando Norris in Spa.
Yes, Lando. His engine went.
Engine going. So there are a few. I think probably Leclerc in Bahrain, just because of the context of all of it. He was this brand new Ferrari driver, second race at Ferrari.
Yeah.
Dominated the whole weekend, put it on pole, was so far ahead in the race. And, he was on for an incredible win.
Crazy. Yeah. I'm with you. Albon was desperately unlucky in Brazil.
But he was, I guess, to an extent, a bit of an architect of his own downfall as well there.
No, for sure.
He left the door open.
So wide. He's lucky that Lewis actually didn't hit him into the next country.
Yes.
But yeah, and also don't forget, sort of Albon, don't forget the two Ferraris had taken themselves out.
Yes,
Bottas had taken themselves out.
A bit of mitigating
circumstances. I go with you, Tinus. Leclerc, Bahrain, I think was desperately unlucky, and that might have completely changed the season. Yeah.
It would have changed many things. No, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations to our 3 award winners.
Yes, well done.
Look at them. What an honor.
What an honor.
Get an award on the TF1
Vettel, Hamilton, and Leclerc. Gee whiz.
Yeah.
On the TF1 show.
An illustrious list.
I'd say so.
We can call that.
Yeah, brilliant.
All right, Sasha. I think before we can sign off, I want to ask you, who are your top 5 drivers this season?
This season?
Yes.
Okay. Without a doubt, Lewis Hamilton. The guy's just in another level. Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc. Okay, that's 4. And 1. Oh, you see, this is difficult because I've got now so many other drivers. I'm gonna say George Russell.
Okay.
Just purely because you got Lando, you've got so many others. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, and George Russell. Those are my 5. Yours?
I think so. Hamilton, I think on top as well. And then I'm going to be controversial and say Sainz.
Yeah.
I think Sainz deserves the love. I think he's just been so incredibly consistent over the year. I'd be hard pressed to find a mistake he made. Like, I tried to rack my brain and think, where did Carlos Sainz mess it up for him?
Yeah, no, good, very good point. Very good point.
Literally, I don't think he made any mistakes that I can think of.
Yeah.
Where Max made 1 or 2. Max would probably be 3rd on my list, and Charles 4th. And then similar to you, 5th is a hard one for me. Let me be different and go with Norris.
Yeah.
I think maybe what gave it to Norris for me was his performance in the last race. Oh, no, actually, no, I'm not giving it to Norris. I'm giving it to Perez.
Okay, good one, yes.
You see, this is always what happens with Sergio Perez. You forget
I know you sit like, oh, Perez, and then you go, what a race, Perez.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed Perez. That's a great top 5. I mean, look at it, only one driver, difference between us.
Yeah. No,
and sadly, no Vettel, no Bottas, even though Bottas was good.
Bottas had a good season, but I think, although, being Hamilton's teammate is always going to make you look maybe a bit more ordinary than what you are.
100%.
But Bottas, the thing is, he has some big things he needs to fix. I think for him to really be up there, he needs to fix his wheel-to-wheel racing. I think he needs to somehow figure out a way, similar to, Rosberg was also not the most delicate there, but to just be able to stick his nose in there and maybe make a pass, take the chance and somehow make it happen. And he needs to fix his race pace.
Yeah, listen, we know that he's just going, getting divorced and that kind of stuff. So we don't know where his mind will be, now, but hopefully it'll be a lot clearer for 2020. But yes, he's going to have to be a lot more aggressive. The difference is this year, 2020, he knows it's his last year at Mercedes.
He knows, yeah.
So he's got to go for it. He's got nothing to lose. He has to stick his nose in there. And he is capable of doing that. So Bottas got to do that. Also, I think what he needs to do is lighten up a little. Yes. He's just so aggressively tense. And I know the Finns are not the easiest kinds of people, but he's just always tense, like, oh, no, I'm here. You know what? Lighten up a little, actually have fun. Like if you look at the fun that Lewis has, and I tell you, those results will come, just loosen up a little.
But I think that might be the reason for him being that tense, is because I think it must be so infuriating to have someone like Lewis, who's, he's
goes in New York tonight, then he's getting pole position tomorrow.
He's having a nice time, and then he comes at the wee hours of the morning, his airplane lands on the airport, 4 hours later he's in the car, and then he's outpacing you.
100%. So,
and similar to what happened with Rosberg, like the whole 2016 season, Nico Rosberg just had this frown on his face, like because he was so obsessed with somehow managing to beat Hamilton that. So I think I agree. I think
they should loosen up a little.
They need to loosen up and stop worrying so much. But I guess easier said than done.
Yeah, of course. Much easier to say it here.
But But I think, Sasha, there's lots to look forward to for 2021. And I think that, ladies and gentlemen, is the TF1 show's recap of the 2019 F1 season. And Sasha, I just want to say thank you so much again for joining me today. And I hope to have you back on a couple of episodes, in the near future, as soon as possible. I just want to say to the listeners out there, you can follow Sasha on Twitter, on Instagram. I think your handle on both is at F1 Sasha.
That's right.
So just go look for him there. He's always there with pearls of wisdom.
Sometimes.
Yes. And so please give him a follow to see his thoughts on all sorts of different topics. And then I'd just also like to say thank you to you, my trusty and loyal listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in throughout the entire year. Just like to say, if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a comment with your thoughts and ideas. And if you loved today's episode, please hit the subscribe button as well to be at the forefront of all of my future episodes. You can follow me on Twitter, where my handle is at TF1 Show, or on Instagram, where my handle is at the TF1 Show. And don't worry too much. This isn't the end. This isn't the last you'll hear from me this year. You can look out for my next episodes coming. And then obviously I'll be back in 2020 to discuss all of the things happening then. So thank you very much, Sasha, again. And goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Tinus. Thank you.